Hi, everybody. I apologize for getting too close to you. It's better at a distance for me, at least. And I have a few questions here from people who have written in. One's from Betty Toslin in England. And she says, her question is, could you please explain how we would know for sure if we had our own protectors, guides, protectors. We might have a feeling we do, but not quite sure. Is there anything we can do to know for definite? I haven't got a clue about the definite part, but I asked you to do a couple of things. Number one, remember that your relationship with how you function is more dominant than anything. Your structure, the energy field around you that is filled with information about from the time of your birth, that is filled with little webs or cobwebs, little central diagrams or images of what you find valuable and important. And they touch each other. It's a little bit like if you ever see some of Barbara Lahid's paintings, you'll kind of get the idea about some of the things that touch each other. But you can imagine this in your mind fairly easily. But some of these things take precedence over what you would like to have be true, what you would like to be true, because they're so reflexive internally. You might say with one breath, oh, please help me and guide me and protect me. And I would suggest under those conditions that you say that to the highest concept or idea that you in particular can have. For example, some people may not have that kind of an orientation, but they may think of themselves as being highly intelligent, and they should be able to figure everything out. And when they can't, it's very disturbing. So, and then a number of things may happen in a row that make them feel fairly vulnerable. So that is another disturbing thing, because within the magnetic field or the engaging field that they have that is really involved with handling forces moving through you and from you and into you, these systems are always, that I was talking about before, are always spurred on by these renewing flows that occur in your day-to-day. So they are spurred on or renewed, and they may be counter to what you want, but they feel, if they were neglected by you, that it would make you feel vulnerable. So your reflexive responses are very, very valuable to you as an individual personality for the purpose of maintaining a kind of status quo internally. To reach into and negotiate through this consistent baseline structure that we all have, and say, no, just a minute now, I'm not so sure about that, In this case, I would prefer to have it more like this. It's kind of unusual because your reflexes are mixed with or fused with highly charged emotion that attempts to validate things that may not be as significant any longer, but they're still within the construct of this large form, energetic form that you have within you and all around you. So what a couple of notes I just mentioned, maybe I covered them, was number one, go to your highest belief, no matter what that is. If you don't have a belief, you may have a belief in you. Go to the unknown beliefs, or the unknown that you may have potentially and move in that direction, saying that if it's possible for me to get an answer that would be tremendously helpful to me, help me then to move in the direction of that kind of an answer. Help my mind to be open. Help my emotions to calm down enough so I won't flood with myself with tremendous intensity, so that I can't allow my mind to encourage itself to be open to something it has not already considered valuable. Because we are open often to only things that we consider to be of value to us. And I do not mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean that in a real respectful manner. So that's one method. Now, I chose a method that many people may or may not think of, but I chose it as if there was no belief. But you all know that there are tremendous amounts of beliefs all over the world, and possibly not as much openness to ideas that may not be within the webbings or the small little cobwebs of ideation or ideas that link together in some sort of sequence to be helpful to the individual on a personality level, on a thinking level. That can interfere a little bit with a natural response that may occur simply because you want to respond to something and downplay what you haven't considered viable yet, or possibly viable yet. So you can encourage that if this is either manner is your way of thinking, I have no way of engaging with higher levels, or I have all kinds of ways of engaging because my belief is really strong, then follow that belief until you get to the point where you're protecting the belief. Then slow it down. Slow it down. Because now you're going into an emotional response which will not allow yourself to engage with an understanding that may be helpful to you in a protective, kind of a protective aspect. Remember, you're protecting the will to go beyond what you already think, as well as protecting and putting a wall around you and letting nothing be submitted to you other than what you believe is already true. Well, these are two extremes, I would think. But in a kind of a way, every individual engages with life to move forward beyond where they were before. In thought, in the way we need to emote, perhaps, or in fact, how we function as an individual on a physical level. And that is kind of encapsulating mental, emotional, and physical orientations. And all of that, from my perspective, of course, is spiritual. But the inclination is to protect the identity of what is already formulated within for the purpose of being involved with that which you believed before. Not necessarily moving beyond what you can allow yourself to take in. Because when you take in information, you look for places within the construct of your being to make sense of it. That means there's alignment somewhat. Not perfect, but alignment of some way, in some way. Then what you're trying to do, if not consciously, unconsciously, is broaden that out so that you can again move forward in some manner to enable you to understand differently how you need to have things within you. And remembering, of course, you're always, because you do such a thing, you're projecting that into the future. If you don't do anything at all, only protect yourself, you project that into the future. And you continue to isolate yourself from going beyond where you are now. And we are all, every one of us, involved with that kind of isolating propensity, and to be very kind about it. We don't know we're doing it. Although sometimes we might get a hint, but we often don't know we're doing it. So then the other point, I said, ask for help, guidance, protection, but let it only be to the highest and best so that I can continue to grow beyond where I am now. If you consider that valuable from your perspective, each and everybody's perspective, everyone is slightly different, then perhaps you have in the back of your mind the cultivation of a willingness to allow yourself to go beyond, no matter how important something is that you truly consider there's nothing beyond that, to go beyond that place eventually, because often, if you sit with something long enough, you get to understand it well enough that you're really becoming more equipped to move into a place that now you can move into because you understood something before. Prior to that, all you can do is really assert how valuable that thing is that you have the sense of moving, that you need to move beyond. Just a bit, so you can understand more. That's called, from my perspective, a broadening. So continue to broaden. The most beautiful thing about life is nobody can stop you from broadening except you. Listen, encourage, enable the willingness to understand that there is something slightly beyond you. And if you don't find that funny, better still, find it funny. It will help. I'm not sure if I did anything else. Oh yeah, trust is often initial. So if anything doesn't kind of meet how you see things within, then there's a reflexive distrust of something. You know, I wouldn't want a young kid, let's say grade 2 or 3, in charge of what my dentist thinks might be important. I wouldn't want him as a lawyer. I wouldn't want him or her as a doctor. But sometimes asking the youth within you a question that it's not prepared to answer, you will find that the youth within you will come up with an answer. I don't know if anybody else remembers Art Linkletter asking these wonderful questions of young kids. Oh my God, it was so funny, but you should have been listening to how these kids came up with an answer that made basic sense based on their constructed backgrounds, no matter what they would be, and their affiliation with words. If a word sounded like something else, they would associate that word, astronomy or whatever it may be, with something else that made sense to them, and they would answer it in relationship to that previous piece. We may not know we do that all the time, but there is no limit to learning. We reach a point where we believe we know a lot. In fact, often know everything about something. And find out 2 or 3 years later, 10 years later, 10 seconds later, that there is so much beyond what we believed was already at an end point. If we can remember that that always exists, no matter how able we are coming up with an answer in nature, human nature as well as ultimate nature, then we'll begin to understand that there is no limit to this except us. We limit because we don't trust that a new idea might be helpful. It's hard to deal with the old idea because we don't know enough about an old idea. Therefore, we mistrust old ideas and new ideas. We're good at mistrusting. But it doesn't mean it's bad. It means we're practiced. That's all. Trust with attention to continual development is of great value. I don't understand this particular thing. However, as I go on, I'll keep it in the back of my mind and let it revisit my conscious level so that I can try and reconsider it at a later date. Perhaps then I'll understand it better. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about here that might be helpful to us all. We all need this, I think. What do you think? Because it's important for you to think too. Thank you, Betty. That's an interesting question. Not sure the answer is great, but nonetheless, it's a question. There's another one by Ian Reimer. I'm not quite sure, Ian, about this question, but I'll try and make my sense of it. You say that I mentioned guiding lost spirits who may not be aware that they are dead into the light. Then you mentioned you had read various information about the possibility of the light being a trap for souls to be then brainwashed and reincarnated into another human body. If there is a universal law, let me try this one first, about the incarnation of souls or beings of consciousness for the purpose of utilizing energy at a mundane level like ours, a youthful level like ours, then that might be a universal law. Some people believe that in reincarnation, if you reincarnate, you're bad. So you've done something bad in your last life. No. You could have, but that's not the reason why you incarnate. You would reincarnate for the purpose of being able to handle a particular frequency of energy in a particular manner that would indicate that you could handle that frequency better as you went along in life, and that perhaps there is an indicator within that once again continues to express a watchful eye on how you're functioning with frequencies, so that you may not have to enter again for that frequency for some time, because you are training to be able ultimately to incarnate on various levels for the purpose of helping those levels out through a transmission of flow through you and those chakras, and how your physical body handles them, those energies, and those chakra valves through which those energies flow. Your emotional body handles them, and your mental body handles them. And how you have to construct a self-oriented system to be able to function, and how stiff that has to be to validate you so that you don't feel so vulnerable that you can't function. Or that you can use a kind of ego identity or identity system or method of perception or awareness on various levels without necessarily engaging with the self-interest that you initially, in a youthful system, may have to for the purpose of survival within that system. For example, our system, earth plane, the balance of emotion, physical and mental systems, how you have your emotional disposition, always wanting to be superior to others, or you feel inferior all the time, therefore you want to build up a sense of worth. This is a normal method of engaging. You're dealing with frequencies internally that you're trying to engage with in a manner that to try and help you to survive, and incarnating will help that. You get to practice. So practicing is part of the deal. And trying to also figure out that that may be part of the deal. Now, this may be a belief system. Some believe that. It's only a belief system. We get one shot at it. We don't get a lot of shots at it. In my opinion, that's not true, because I can remember previous times. My hope is everybody remembers previous times, and you don't have to be king this or queen that, or superior this or superior that. You get to know that you are in a universal journey. And your engagement with this is for the purpose of continual internal capacity to handle more flow. Ultimately, there are many who can do that. Maybe you go on into another kind of universe that allows you to function in a different way, where your talents are slightly different, and you're learning then to handle tremendous flow of light all the time, as if it was hardly even there. That's worth thinking about. I personally don't subscribe to the second idea, that light is the trap for souls. I personally don't do that, simply because I've had the experience of that flow being quite bright, and it being difficult enough to handle, because it's so different than here. You look at that and you begin to ask a lot of questions where there are really no answers. But remember, as a human being, we are creative relative to this level. And so we are creatively often engaging with stuff we have no clue about. If light is a trap like that, and you become consciously aware, and that's the key in relationship to reincarnation and karma, because these things are positive from my perspective, then where is the key? Focused. If it's a higher level focus, then the more you can handle, the better it is for the levels at which you have domicile in wherever you're living at a given point in time. It's worthwhile looking at it from a positive perspective, unless you need to look at it from another perspective to make yourself feel secure, because there are vulnerabilities attached to every belief. Because disbelief is a belief. It's not bad. It's not good. Just another belief. When you have the experience of knowing something through experience, the experience of knowing something through experience, your consideration of belief is different. You can honestly say, this I know to be true, past that I can only surmise. In that, I can know that that would be true, if you've had that experience. But we love, I mean, my gosh, we read all kinds of stuff. Science fiction, fantasy, science sometimes can be fantasy, pseudoscience can be fantasy. But hopes, wishes, and desires are everywhere. Nothing negative about this. But discernment and trying to figure out in a constructive manner what could be helpful in our development is valuable. Because if there is such a high level of engagement, why would it not want to be constructive? We do that really well. higher level may not do that the same way. Unfortunately, as above, so below, I don't believe counts in that case. Because that's more like as below, so above. That's very disturbing. So if you look at the old traditional Greek gods under these conditions, then you say, we have the right to believe whatever we want. I think that's true. We have that right. Doesn't mean we're right, but we have that right. But the gods in the Greek orientation fought like crazy all the time for dominance. We live in this world that is very chatty about the importance of us. My God, we are just art link letters, little kids, doing the best we possibly can. Please do the best you possibly can, and try not to be as anxious as you might be when you're feeling vulnerable about having to protect your belief so strongly. This is very profoundly difficult to do. I hope that made sense. I wrote a couple of notes here. Just try to tend to follow a belief until you reach a point where you have to protect the belief. As soon as you have to protect the belief, you're no longer attempting to understand the belief. You're attempting to solidify the belief so that in a kind of a way, you've stopped thinking. You're now emotionally based. Emotion is great, very valuable, extremely important. It really is a help to all of us in every engagement with life. However, if it's dominant, it's not that helpful. It will not allow entry of anything other than what it knows must be true because it believes it. We need belief and we need ways of thinking because we grow through us, not somebody else. Although you'll listen to somebody else talking or doing things and you'll take out of that what you can handle in that structure, that energy structure that lies within you and around you, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And that's what we do. We're learning.
Sorry, you're following it to dissipate it? You're following the...
No, you're following it to notice it, to become aware consciously of it, David, I'm talking to, and to begin to be okay with saying, wow, this is interesting. Not sure I really believe that, but it's interesting. It has maybe some merit. I don't know. So you continue with that. If you automatically move to protect it because you come up with an idea, then all of a sudden you cannot allow anything in that would dissipate that which you are attempting to protect. Not negatively. As a matter of fact, you may need to protect that for a week or two. And then you find out that you're the one that decides that maybe this is not as important as I thought. But there's an interesting consideration. This is just a consideration. You don't have to agree with it. But listen, you take 2 or 3 ideas that you really fall in love with. And suddenly, you're not as enamored with those 2 or 3 ideas as you used to be. However, if you did not have those 3 ideas and don't necessarily agree with them, you couldn't handle a new idea that you just thought of. You weren't prepared for that new idea that comes in. You may even exchange that for other ideas, but you're not prepared to handle the 4th idea that comes in until you hear the first 3. So in a way, the things that you thought were true, found were not as true as you thought they were, prepares you for broadening out into the realization of another idea materializing. And that also may be the same thing, but if you think about this, it's preparing you to think beyond where you can even closely think currently. And that was not an advertisement for Star Trek. Okay, I have another one here from, it looks like Carol. The energy has been strange beyond the stressful things that are going on in Nashville. And a number of people are feeling as if it's like energy is moving crosswise. Don't know how to explain it. But it's as if there's a weird kind of sense going on. But she says, felt better after walking outdoors, physical body, always attached to the emotional disposition, always. Listening to classical concert, really interesting relationship between classical music and emotion. It cultivates a mental engagement. And this comes out of the old 70s. Carol, you would remember this. In the 70s, went down to Washington, D.C. There was a lot of kind of pseudo-research that was going on around Mozart, Beethoven, even what is the winter, spring, summer?
Vivaldi.
Vivaldi. And how it affected the emotional disposition and how it affected learning. And there was a lot of, it was tremendous, except that when I went to research where this place was, it was really just a kind of an address in Washington, and there wasn't very much there at all. Maybe it was lunch hour or something, and it was extended. But it was very interesting, because if you do listen to some classical music, Debussy, for example, I don't know, some guy, everybody has their favorites. What you find is it soothes the emotional disposition, kind of you forget it, that's soothing, and there's a sudden engagement. For me sometimes, I'm watching the notes in my head. The tones are striking, bing, bing, bling, bing, bling, and it calms even the body down, but it calms the emotional mind down because you're not reacting to it. You're beginning to kind of go into a semi-meditative state because you're engaging and enjoying this music. Listen now, if it's possible that we're right about this business of the physical, emotional, and mental structures and energy forms being only energy, and we are energy, music is energy. So therefore, music will affect you energetically. It will soften down the structures that you already have inside of you. If you, for example, only focus on music for 15-20 minutes, then it'll calm you down for 15-20 minutes. If you go back to playing the music of your personality, because you need to reassert those moves so that you remember that music, from the time of your birth, then what you're doing is reasserting those tunes. Piano reasserts this, violin reasserts in a certain way. You cannot listen to a violin without becoming touched emotionally. It's very valuable. String instruments are set up that way, and it's been well known for since Renaissance period times, and when they used to have some really weird instruments, of which I have no idea what their names were. They were really fascinating. They were before cello, and they were unusual instruments, really strange. But they knew that music would be beneficial. And the old balladeers, if you remember, they had these weird guitar-like instruments, not really guitar though, and they would use the music with the stories, and they would sing ballads of heroes and companions And that would soothe the people who are not involved with the wars. It would make them say, oh, isn't that wonderful? We are looked after. It was a joy. In looking after, partly looking after yourself that way. And I was, you know me, I often say, it's really interesting, even if you play an instrument badly, you should play it. Because when you're playing it, you are doing something that you're focusing on, and you're, other than your personality, you're making music with your personality every day. But when you're making music that is soft and gentle, you're affecting your personality. Yeah, just saying. It's a possibility. Once we know how to play an instrument, our identity takes over, and we are playing this instrument. We lose that receptivity. We're engaging with the importance of us, not the music coming at us. Or if you don't play it well, you say, well, I'm not going to play it. I played it so badly. Ignore you. That's an old piece you're playing in your personality instrument. Soften it down. Kind yourself out a bit and say, okay, no. What I'm trying to do here is learn how to see how I respond to these notes. If I become a little bit, for example, uncomfortable, I might go to the piano or pick up a mandolin or a guitar or something like that, if I could play them, banjo, whatever it is, and I try to do it, or pick up the old flute downstairs, which not only is it bad, but I'm bad at it. So, and I'll try and make a note, a few notes together, and suddenly, all of a sudden, there's 2 or 3 notes there, and then there's something, and I feel better. I've forgotten that I was uncomfortable for a few minutes. It doesn't mean you have to do it daily. Oh God, that's drudgery. I have to learn how. No, what are you talking about? You're playing the old instrument in you. Isn't it wonderful how you can play that all the time? Yeah, but it's not that helpful. You're reasserting the validation of the instrument in you and where you stepped before. Okay, you have every right to do that. Honestly, Carol, I believe, and she also says meditating and eating plain foods. Really, that's probably true. It's very helpful. But we are people of extremes, often. As soon as we start doing one thing, that's it. There's nothing else. Find middle ground in this stuff. It will be helpful to you. Find middle ground in this stuff. Fair enough? You're just ignoring other stuff. You want to draw links. Draw links. That way you affect the old places that you play. And they don't have to come out in a rush and a roar. Here's what I would say about this cross energy. Be happy you perceive it. Move to do something with it to gentle it down. It may be the effects of others in trouble, or it might be the effects of a different frequency coming in that you're not used to. Pull a few kindness things out of your hat. Gentle you down the best you can. It will not be easy. One other way you can do it is this. It's an old Buddhist trick. I'm just adding a little bit. When you go into meditation, practice this for a while, and you can do this when you're living life. You don't have to do it only in meditation. In your mind's eye, your imagination, mind's eye, see yourself as a large, empty form. You could say a big bag of tricks that has nothing but air in it. And because it's better to be smiling than not smiling. let's do this seriously. Do it with a little bit of a grin. Go inside, and when you're noting those things, see where they are. Inside, be about 3/4 of an inch tall, like a little nanotechnology person. Go in there, because it doesn't matter how big you are or how small you are, your consciousness is right there. Your awareness is right there. You can train this. It won't take long. Go inside, and where you can perceive inside, you'll be inside outside now, you'll perceive a pressure here, a pressure down here at the will area, pressure maybe at the neck or the brow or the face. Use energy and ask for help or ask for healing on this area. Don't care if you have to do it 1,000,000 times. There's no numbers. There's only the doing. So you do it and you ask for help for that. Ask that it be transmuted and healed. Gentle, balanced, and appropriate. Please, the best you possibly can. That will be helpful. It will be helpful in almost everything. For example, if you overreact sometimes, none of us do that, of course, but perchance we might do it even then. You will notice there are two things that happen. First of all, you gentle down for about a second. Second of all, you remember you should be reacting because you're validating that piece, that energy piece inside of you that needs validation. It'll come back in. Go again. Go back in. Do it again. Be patient. You're a universal being. This is a form that you are using. You are a universal conscious being. Not quite conscious of total universality yet, but be helpful to you, and you be the person who never gives up on you. And you be the helper, and you ask for help. And it comes through even a small little being, as well as the bigger being. I hope that helps out a little bit. Thank you, Carol, very much for that question. It's really interesting. There's another one here from Pat Donahue. And Pat, I'm going to read the whole thing. She says, "Hi, Ron. Mary always had good questions for you. At least I found them helpful to learn about. And maybe I'm prompted to ask one to fill in for her. Anyway, a friend asked me recently what the difference was between guided meditation and mindfulness meditation, the quiet sitting kind. I know guided meditation is often helpful for folks who are new to the practice altogether, but are there differences in terms of how deeply one goes into the meditative state, or what can we be aware of?" There are all kinds of guided meditations, and there's all kinds of attentive, being consciously aware meditations, and there are those meditations where energy can come in and you can lose your conscious awareness because you go too quickly into an alpha state or even a lower state than this. Because of this, you lose perhaps a purpose for meditation, because you'll start thinking that total blotto and a wipeout is a great meditation. And by the way, there are many views about this. I hold the view personally that hold your focus as long as you possibly can. But if you don't, if you suddenly cannot hold it any longer, then don't negate the meditation because you shifted into an alpha state that was too strong for you to be consciously aware in. You're practicing, learning how to engage with a state of consciousness that ultimately will allow you to be extremely conscious at a deeper level. So, the business of going through a guided meditation, often there's all kinds of flowery guided meditations. They take you down on a beach. They take you into a large field and you're smelling flowers and roses. It's keeping your focus on you. That's not bad. You're learning how to let your mind slip into a state where you're still kind of semi-in charge. But you're being guided in this meditation. There's nothing wrong with this, except eventually that's not purpose. That purpose can help you to be gentle and soft, especially if you're anxious. It can be really very beneficial. One of the methods of mindfulness meditation is to put your focus on the breath, on breathing. There are many other kinds, but that one is often used by yoga folks. Really, basically what you're trying to do there is literally a kind of pranayama, if you're looking at it from a Hindu perspective. You can do the same thing from a Buddhist perspective, but like in Vipassana, that kind of thing. And it will tend to open some of these chakras stronger. Unfortunately, sometimes very, very strong, starting at the root center. You can open your root center very strongly, your gonad center very strongly, and if you don't know how to consciously redirect these things, they can be very, very confusing. Because if your gonad center is really strongly open and you're not used to that, you'll just plainly be horny all the time. If your root center is open and it's fairly strong and you can't feel it, don't know it's on, you will just be positional all the time and you will defend yourself no matter what. But it doesn't mean those two are bad. It means you don't know how to soften these things down. More gonad center, you're redirected towards the throat. More opening of the brow center, throat center, and the upper part of the chest. You don't know how to do that. Root center, same what? Emotional center, you can blow wide open. In fact, every center can open on the emotional level, right up to the crown. Same is true on the physical level, on the etheric level, on the mental level as well. But everything is written about the etheric body and the chakras on the etheric body. They exist everywhere. These are energy tunnels, flow, valves. These are powerful events. So in these two, by the way, another meditative mindfulness meditation is mantras. They are extremely efficient. And when you use those mantras, you can use them if you know what they mean, it's helpful. But even if you don't know what they mean, what they do is keep your attention on the mantra. You are now conscious. But you have to take your attention off of the importance of you for using them. You're not that important because it's a technique, it's a methodology, it's an instrument you're playing to soften down your engagement with the importance of you for doing the meditation. Everything is focused on that. The breath is focused on softening down the importance of you for doing it, which, by the way, if you do it well, increases the importance of you for doing it well. So you're trying to find a place in there where You are noting what you're doing, and it keeps you more consciously aware, but you begin to notice all around you at the same time. You're beginning to notice that you are perceiving more than just your body. You are moving off the body, around the body. You're perceiving what may be there. You're attempting to perceive. With some methods, you can meditate, and there are some techniques that get you to be able to be perceptive of those centers. Even when you're walking around, you're not doing the meditation. Well, that's a different kind of system, because you're being open to the levels that allow you to perceive those things that many people, when they're doing meditation, don't ever get to perceive. It's a conscious awareness system helped by others, helps you because they're open, they help you to be open, you're being helped, and then you begin to think, oh, yeah, I know how to do that. And you think everybody else does. But they don't. If they're taught that way, it doesn't mean they experience it. They will look at you, assess you, and then say, well, this must be open, and that is open, and this is open, based on how they see you. In other words, they see through their interpretation of you. Doesn't mean they can perceive what's really going on. With you guys, I've been trying to help you to understand that you can perceive others, not relative to how you think they are, but they are transmitting to you. You're an energy being. They touch you. Where do they touch you? Ah, you're touching me here. Therefore, this is open at least somewhat, and that somewhat. That's where the value of meditation begins to get strong. But also, the value of engaging with the broader sense of existence gets stronger. But you want to run back and get back into your energy field that relates to the anchor right here at the physical level, because that makes you feel more secure. The sense of real meditation might make you feel insecure at times, but very secure at other times. I think I've covered some of this stuff that I wrote down. Oh, different other ways. Excuse me. You can take a couple of phrases from the scriptures, for example, and you can think about these and meditate on them. It's like you go over them in your mind and you're asking yourself questions. A number of questions might be, what do I think? Okay, what does this stanza mean if I just read it? Okay, what's it mean as a metaphor? Why would anyone say this? And how would it affect me if I felt exactly like that stanza? Provided you pick a peaceful one and that kind of thing. How does that resonate with me? While all the other aspects of your engagement with life is going on in your energy field, you're trying to focus on something that will affect your energy field. Same thing with meditation. Same with concentration or focus on breathing or on a mantra. You're trying to perceive around you at the same time that you're doing this other thing. You're opening yourself to broadening your awareness, whether it be visual, sensory, auditory, any method at all. All of these systems are uniquely linked within the mind, within the nervous system, and they will cross over. It's very interesting, but you have to let yourself soften down with respect to how the world is for you already, so that you can proceed past those boundaries. In the old traditional theosophical structures, they would call those those boundaries ring past me nuts. I can never understand why they call them that, but anyway, it's all right. No disrespect. I just never understood why they call it. Why not boundaries? I'm sure there were reasons. People come up with these things because they think they would make sense after they come up with them. Other things you can do, you can take an image. You can look at an image and take that image in with you into the meditation. Try to visualize, I guess you could say. Sorry, try to see that image and wonder about, be curious about the image. You can ask questions in a meditation. Over and over and over again, make it positive and give it the question a possible response. A question is a questing for whatever answer is there, not only one answer. You open your mind to the receptivity of having more than one answer, and more than only the one you want. That's why you ask the question. If you already have an answer, it's not a question. One way to trick it is to give as many answers as you know. Run out of them. Now take it in. Now you don't have an answer. I already gave that one. The next, another deeper level, is to try and quiet the emotional mind or reflexive attention that goes on internally. One way that I've discussed many times before is a simple thing. I'm not interested in what you're telling me. I want to meditate. Leave me alone. I'll talk to you later. Your version of that, not mine. I use my version, but you use yours. I'm not interested. You will be shocked to find out how this structure of yours will try to get your attention so that you will not attend to anything outside the energy form. One of the best ones is, it's all nonsense. Another one is, this isn't working. It's not working because you're not working. And even if it doesn't work, so what? That's it. Not working is within the field of your boundary. You don't want to go outside that. That'd be natural to think that it wasn't working. Yeah. Well, I think I've run out of questions.
No, there's one more actually.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I want to be of help and service, and I worry about my habitual. This is Maureen. Reactions to people and events will drown out the highest will. Don't worry about that. The best I can tell you, it will never go away. No matter how strong your focus is on issues that relate to maintaining exactly the way you are, even you will go beyond that. There's an aspect inside us all that demands we move. Life means movement. It doesn't mean negativity, positive stuff. It means movement. If you are more positive, you feel better. If you're more negative, you'll feel negative. You won't feel good. There's a clue there. Try to be more positive. But know that there's something beyond even that. There is a glowing inside of every filament of energy. Any tiny little bit of engagement with life. From my perspective, it includes the existence of life itself. You will not want to remain the same. Ever. But you'll be happy if you have things outside of you that mark you as a valuable person. when you die, you won't bother with them. Because you can't take them with you. Oh, forgot that part. But you can take you with you. So take a you with you that is curious, willing to go beyond anything that will hold you from becoming at one with a broadening that allows you to feel less sensitive to where you have to remain to make you feel only comfortable with how you believe the world is, because the world is bigger, the universe is bigger, and most of all, you are larger. And that would be a good meditation. Am I really that large? And I'm not talking about girth. I'm not talking about emotion. I'm not talking about mind in the mental sense, intellectual sense. I'm talking about the capacity to engage with and know for sure that there is a person in China, in India, that is able and helping you to go beyond the limits of where you can go, because they can go beyond their limits. Not because you're special, not because you're great. That means not because you're not great, not because you're not special, just because you're at the edge of being able to be helped. Therefore, you can be helped. That's an energy thing. When that occurs, when there is knowledge of a person being ready to be helped, this may be helpful to you, Betty, I don't know. The help is there because there is the engagement with the being ready. Not the understanding of you on your part about you being ready. Because this is an energy thing. The practice of engaging in continuance prepares you to go beyond where you are currently. And that in itself is noted as vulnerability to some degree. Makes you feel kind of subtly uncomfortable. And that's the feeling you get. The wind is blowing cross purposes to what you believe things should be like. It's a very vulnerable thing. And that can be helped by those who have reached the place where almost daily they go beyond where they were yesterday. And they have a strong, not wrong. I hope that's not a paraplexus. Freud would just roll over in his grave and say, I heard that! That is a sense of engagement that will make you feel uncomfortable because it makes everything that you believe you know is right not that right. Right and wrong there become pretty fuzzy. And that is against the way we are trained to think. But there is a movement there into a place of almost renewal, where you are open to renewing the way you need to protect the things that you don't want to renew, you want to remain. You want to remain. So past that image right there, Maureen, that image right there might be helpful in helping you to feel a little less vulnerable. When you're at that stage where you can feel that vulnerability, it's uncomfortable, and there is a sense of, because there is a sense of movement, it's hard to detect for us as we're growing. Later on, as we have grown a little bit more, that is detectable. Picture this. A large electrical system, like those bugs. You know those bug systems in your backyard? From time to time you see them someplace, especially on TV. And you'll notice bugs going through. Picture a very able being. She may be someplace in China, another one in India, another one someplace else. And they detect movement of a bit of a bug touching their system. And they know someone's touched them. That someone leaves a path. They gently elongate their presence into that pathway, and it touches us. That makes us feel a little uncomfortable for a day or two, a week, whatever. But we get through it, and there are subtle, tiny little bits of changes that occur within us, and that we can allow ourselves to actually notice just a bit. This whole process is a movement of those kinds of changes, gently becoming more conscious, and they're not always changes that we would call the right change, because you know that that thing was right, but we don't any longer quite think exactly that way anymore. That's a change. But that's annoying. I was a lot more comfortable when that was right. But because of that shift, you now become open to something else relevant to another idea way over here in this part of the energy field, which, by the way, is interconnected. They're not separate in space. They're interconnected. And suddenly there's a relationship. And the understanding is broader over here. And you begin to see slightly different than what you could see before. I am not talking about visual seeing here. I'm talking about perceiving. That is the perceiving is the seeing of the seer. It is not the clairvoyant, the clairaudient, the clairsentient, the clair this and the clair that. It is the person who is engaging in a 3-4 dimensional plane, 5-dimensional plane, that allows a willingness within them to watch what's going on inside the universe that they exist in, at least to some degree. I wish everybody really well, and thanks for the opportunity to give a talk. Thanks. Sorry about the mechanical difficulties. We'll try and fix it.